How's it going today, guys? So you just bought yourself a classic Chevy with a Rochester B, BC, or BV one-barrel carburetor on it. And you want to tear it apart to make sure it's good. Maybe your float's stuck. Maybe it's been sitting in a field for 30 years, like this one. So the first thing you're going to need is a couple tools. You're going to need a screwdriver, standard screwdriver. A 9/16 is generally what these are. And you're kind of going to want a short wrench, so when you get to the back, it's really handy between the valve cover. You're going to need a pair of pliers, whether it be needle nose or the standard slip joint. And you're going to want some line wrenches. So the first thing you're going to want to do is just get everything off the carburetor. There's quite a bit going on with this, but it's fairly simple. So the first thing you're going to want to do is, there's two ways to go about this. You end up needing to take this clip off, which is where a screwdriver does come in handy. You can kind of push on the bottom side of these and get it started. Hopefully I'm not in the way there. You can catch that end and it'll pry up. Once it's up, you can pull the rod out, and I like to slip it on there. Now, something I always try to practice on something I've never done before. Hook the spring onto the throttle there so I don't lose it, is take pictures before starting. That way, if you have any questions at any point, you can look back at the camera, take pictures all the way around, just for future reference. So I'll continue on here, get that started. Oop, that one just came off. Pop that off, put that there, clip it on. I like to clip them all back on, that way you don't lose them. Alright, so that clears up the carburetor for the most part. Now we have fuel line and the vacuum line. Manuals are a lot easier, manual vehicles are a lot easier because the vacuum line doesn't also run to the transmission, but it's just a nipple that comes around for the vacuum advance. So, let's figure out what size this is. There we go. This happened to be 7/16 fuel line. Sometimes they're 1/2 inch. Alright, fuel line's off. I'm just going to disconnect the vacuum line for that back here. And there we go. Now the carburetor is independent of itself. So we will just go ahead and take off. Let's make sure I got the right side here. Now my wrench is a 19/32, which is a 32nd bigger than 9/16. So it's a little bit loose, but it's short, and that's what I need for this situation. Another ideal thing to do would be to spray everything down with some carb cleaner before you pull the carburetor off. That way you don't have any junk fall into the engine. So I'm going to do that here in a second. Alright, one nut off. I should say that I don't plan on rebuilding this carburetor. I plan to just clean it. Oftentimes you can get away with that if it hasn't been too neglected. Well, that nut is tight. It's loose, but it's tight. There's a bunch of junk on the threads, making it a little bit more of a trick. carburetor is loose. So I'll just go ahead and pop it up, I guess. I smell gas in it. So let's go get this thing cleaned up. Now there's a couple options here that you have. It does have gas in it, look at that. That would be to get some sort of carb cleaner, like Berryman's, and dunk it in there. Or you could use like a solvent tank with whichever preferred solvent you have. I use gasoline because I don't have a solvent tank, and I don't have any carb dip, so I just clean everything up with some gasoline. Another option that I've done before is if I'm going to be very proud of the vehicle, I will take the carburetor, disassemble it, clean it all with gas or whichever chemical you prefer. Then I will stick it in some Evapo-Rust. That'll take a lot of the tarnish off of it. Do not use vinegar. I've used vinegar before, ate the carburetor up. It was worthless at that point, non-usable. So don't use vinegar on your carburetor. Accelerator pump. It's starting to work now. So let's get started here. 2 more tips before we start. If the carburetor's stuck on the intake, you're going to want to try to tap it with the back of a screwdriver to loosen it up. Don't get in there and try to pry and get it up. You're going to tear up your gasket. And if you want to reuse it and be cheap like me, that won't help. You can see there's a bunch of gas in there. Yeah, it's old gas, very old gas. Pooled up in the bottom. So 6 cylinders have a really bad problem. I'm going on a rambling rant now. In the wintertime, they will pool up with fuel right where that gas is. Let me see if I can get closer. I don't know if you can see down there, but there's fuel. And then they run super rich and they'll want to die out. That's where you need the heat riser for these things. The long intake runners aren't very great for helping with that in wintertime. Summertime you don't have a problem, but wintertime is when you start running into problems with it wanting to run super rich and you having to baby it all the time. Okay, so I went through the tapping with a screwdriver, and before you leave the car, you might want to stick a rag or something in there just so junk doesn't fly in there, because if you have it off for a week or so, you might come back with some other stuff in there that you didn't want. I'm going to throw the air cleaner back up here. We're going to head off. So we're starting off with this super dirty carb. But don't worry, it's going to. Now after a little bit of movie magic and some elbow grease, I managed to get it partially cleaned up. Enough for what I need to do. I just didn't want junk falling all over the place in there. So, next, if I can find my screwdriver, there it is. You're going to want to take this off. Now, remember where the spring is, or the spring holder is, because it needs to go back there. This is how the orientation is on the car. The downfall to these carburetors is this part right here. As you can see, it's kind of battered inside, and basically it'll break loose of this cheap casting, and then you won't be able to put your air cleaner on. There's some things you can do to fix it, whether it be drilling and tapping and putting set screws in from the side, or this one is pinned. However, that doesn't last super long sometimes. So be wary of that when you're taking the air cleaner on and off. Oftentimes it's just easier to spend the couple hundred to buy either a used carburetor and take the top off, or a new carburetor, and go from there. There's a slight trick to this. You don't want to, as you can see, the gasket's between the two, and you don't want to rip up and just rip that gasket. Preferably, you kind of want to stay with the top one. The top housing. So the trick is to get it to come up without destroying it. Okay. Okay, everything looks like we're having to hang up somewhere over in here. Oh no, it's gonna rip. This gasket's old. It's not playing very nice. But that's to be expected. We're gonna go ahead. Remember the orientation of this. Oh, there we go. Pop that off. Don't lose this. Screw. And be careful getting that. This gasket's all tore up now. There we go. The trick here really is this guy coming through that hole there. All right. Well, I can already see part of my problem was the float was about ready to fall out. I need a new gasket up here. I think it'll work for what I need, just trying to move it around the yard, but I definitely would not rely on it. An easy trick with these is to see if the float is bad, is to put it up to your ear and shake it. If you hear fluid inside, that's probably got a hole in it. So, there's some helpful hints for you. Feels good. I'm going to go ahead and clean this up, and then we'll keep going. So basically at this point in time, after cleaning it a little bit more, I just go through and squirt brake cleaner, carb cleaner in all of the orifices I can get to. Just kind of clean it all out and make sure it's clean. You don't want any trash in there, otherwise you're going to end up back in square one. So that's the kind of the key. Oh, I'm caught right there. That clip. That's kind of the key thing there, is just to make sure to go through and try to clean all the holes out. Make sure everything is cleaned out. Once that's done, you can put it back together. Now I'm going to have to wait a bit because I ripped this gasket pretty bad and I had to buy a new kit. So that way I can replace this one gasket. A little annoying, but it'll be done. So stay tuned because we're going to swap that out. So I've already gone through and shot brake clean in all the holes I can, even on the top half. A word to the wise with doing this, when you squirt the can, don't squirt it with this facing towards you, because likely the hole may have another ending, which will shoot back right at you. So it's best to kind of hold it at an angle, and probably wise to wear safety glasses at that point, just in case. So I went ahead and did that. It's been sitting for it's been sitting for about a week now. Got my parts kit, or the rebuild kit here. I haven't even opened it to make sure. If you're curious, there's the parts number for the walker. So it'll come packaged with all your seals. It has needle and seat kit generally. Float height gauge to reset your float. I'm not worried about it. It's got a power valve in here. I should probably replace that, but I don't know. I don't think I'm going to run this. Oh, that's something. I haven't got these before, but so those clips are kind of nice to have in case you lose them. Needle and seats. Okay, perfect. So, one last thing to do after you've cleaned everything out is to throw this trash away. One last thing we're going to do is we're going to pull the fuel filter out of here and double check it, make sure it's clean, because there's no sense in going through and cleaning everything if that isn't cleaned. This is also the point where if you wanted to make the carb look really good, would be to throw it in some evaporust. Now, petroleum products kill evaporust in a sense that they it makes it work not as well. So you want to clean this properly and then stick it in, and then it'll take the oxidation and whatnot off of all the parts. So I'm going to go ahead and replace this gasket here. Oops, that too good. Place this gasket, and we will then put the carb top back onto the carb. Let's make sure we get the right one here. And then we will, this thing's just falling apart. This works a lot better with a gasket scraper. Set that there. And so we'll go ahead and put that on there, then we'll pull the fuel filter part off. You guys probably don't want to see me just shut this off and get this off. So, pulling the gaskets out of here, after I wobble the camera everywhere, looks to be that these are the same gaskets. So I don't know why they sent two. But we'll go ahead and slip it on. Alright, so we got the gasket up here. Put the float on. The real trick is going to be slipping this new gasket over this assembly right. Let me slide this all out of the way here so you guys can see this fella. So that is what usually causes these things to rip. You have to hook it in, and then it kind of just, come on, there we go. It'll all kind of fall together. So remember, hook in, and then it goes down. A little bit of jingling, I guess you could say. So we'll go ahead and put this stuff back together. And when you tighten these up, you don't want to over torque everything. So just snug. Just snug. Because if you go too tight, you'll warp stuff. And you don't want to tighten up one and then just go all the way around. You kind of want to make it like a star pattern or something. Okay, we got this kind of somewhat cleaned up here. We're going to finish just snugging it. Now I'll kind of tilt this back so you get an idea of what I'm doing. I'm just kind of not really putting a ton of torque onto it. Pressure, as you will. Just making it so it's tight. I want to make sure it's not going to leak. You don't have to crank it down. Just snug. I'm going to replace that line when I get here in a second. Now this is a trick. I've screwed this side up so many times when I'm doing this. But it should sit like this. That way that detent can set and catch that. So if you drop yours like I have, I'm pretty sure it goes like this. Yeah, I believe that's how it goes. This is why you always take pictures as well. I may be wrong here. Let's look at the sides here. I think this is the side that it rotates in. I think. I always do this. I seem to screw this up quite a bit. No, I'm pretty sure it goes the other way. Pretty sure it goes like this. That way it's all the way open there. Yep. Come on now. You would think I'd be capable of putting a screw in a hole. There we go. Got it. Fast idle. Choke. It's all choke, not fast idle. So disregard what I just said because I don't know what I'm talking about, obviously. Alright, again, I just put a little bit more pressure on this one. This choke's open. Choke's closed. Perfect. Alright, so basically, that's it in the nutshell. Putting it back together. I can't remember if the gasket's ripped. Oh, yes. That's it, putting it back together. Now, taking the fuel filter out, you need either just a big wrench, or this is the KD, and there's the number for it, wrench. Let's move my, break it loose, finger tight here. Or it's not finger tight. Boy, that thing is pretty dirty. There's a spring in there. The spring goes in there. Let's see to catch it. Oop. There's a little gasket in here as well, so you don't want to lose that. Oh, look, it's a little dirty. It's not bad. I've seen a lot worse. So I'll go blow this out with some brake clean, or carb cleaner if you will, and stick it back in and get ready to go put it on the car. So essentially at this point, everything is just reinstalled. So I'm not going to show the video of me reinstalling it because you saw me take it apart, but I'll show you the aftermath. All right, so I got everything mostly hooked back up here. Let me try to get out of the sun. As you can see, everything's hooked back up. Got a new line here. Looks like we're good to go. So now really it's just maybe do some more bottle feeding and see if I can get it started. So if you haven't seen what I've been doing, and the reason really why I'm not too worried about spending a lot of time on this carburetor and I didn't want to spend a bunch of money is, one, this is a 194 in my Chevy 2. If I'm going to keep it a 6-cylinder car, I'm going to go to a 250. If I go to a 250, I have a 4-barrel intake and split headers for it. So I won't even need this carburetor. If I don't have a 250, which I have 2 spares here, which I should say I have 2 spare blocks, and they're either a 230 or 250. I'm not quite sure. Haven't pulled the oil pan to check the crank. I'll just go V8. Go 350, 327 overdrive trans. But to be honest, I really want a 6-cylinder 4-speed vehicle. A 6-cylinder 4-speed would be way funner in my mind, because I'm going to make this vehicle kind of a workhorse kind of thing. Maybe a little bit of a tow vehicle. It seems odd, but it might end up being towing little motorcycle trailers and whatnot. So anyways, that's how you take apart a Rochester carburetor. And like the video if you like it. Hopefully it helps you guys out. Remember to take pictures before you take it apart, and do not use vinegar to clean it because it will just destroy the pot metal. Thanks for watching.